are live to go if you're ready to.
Thank you, sir. As the IT department has announced, it is 7 p.m. Time to call the Wednesday, July 5th, Westfield, Washington Township Advisory Plan Commission meeting to order. If staff could please confirm the presence of a quorum.
Ms. Berkman?
Here.
Mr. Deck?
Here.
Mr. Horke?
Here.
Mr. Johns?
Here.
Ms. Keller?
Here.
Mr. Maui?
Here.
Mr. McCarty?
Here.
Mr. Schmitz? And Ms. Bulgaric. We have a quorum.
Both of the last two are vacationing and out of town, so they will not be joining us tonight. So we have a quorum, thank you. Item next would be to announce changes. There are none that I'm aware of, so we're proceeding with the agenda as is, and we are now ready to approve the minutes of the June 19th, 2023 meeting. Is there a motion regarding the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes for June 19th, 2023.
We have a
I'll second
motion.
that.
We have a second. Motion from Matt Tech, seconded by Andre Maui. We'll need to call the roll since we have a virtual attendee. Staff will please do so.
Yes.
Sorry. Do that one more time. Ms. Berkman?
Yes.
Mr. Deck?
Yes.
Mr. Horke?
Yes.
Mr. Johns?
Yes.
Ms. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Maui?
Yes.
And Mr. McCarty.
Yes.
Item next is to review the rules and procedures for tonight's meeting that do include an item of business and a public hearing.
Yes, so for this evening, we have one public hearing item and one item of business. So for items requiring a public hearing, tonight's meeting has the following structure. The department will summarize the petition. Then the petitioner will be given up to 15 minutes to present the Plan Commission. The president will open a public hearing. Individuals will be given 3 minutes to speak. Those representing a group will be given 5 minutes to speak. Only one member of the group will be given 5 minutes to speak. For efficiency purposes, we ask that those representing a group speak first. The public hearing will be closed when all interested members of the audience have had a chance to be heard and all emails received during the meeting have been provided to commission members. The petitioner will then be given 10 minutes to respond to comments without interruption. The commission will follow with any comments, questions, or concerns regarding the petition. This may include additional discussion with the petitioner. Procedures for items of business. For items that do not require a public hearing, the department will summarize the petition and highlight any changes or modifications since the item was last before the Plan Commission. The department will also describe what action, if any, is necessary to be taken. The petitioner will be given up to 15 minutes to present any changes. The commission will then act upon the petition. So general rules of conduct for this evening: please do not disturb the proceedings in any way. If you need to have a private discussion, then we ask you to please quietly exit the room. Please silence your devices at this time. If you must answer them, then please quietly exit the room. If you're attending in person and wish to speak in regard to a petition scheduled for a public hearing, then please line up along the west wall once the public hearing is open. Please sign in with the speaker sheet as you approach the podium to speak. For efficiency purposes, we ask those representing a group to speak first. During your comments, please state your name and address into the microphone. For record, as we ask that you not repeat any previously stated comments. Your presentation will be timed and you will be advised when there are approximately 30 seconds remaining. If you are not attending in person, comments regarding a petition, they should be emailed to planners@westfield.in.gov with the petition name or number included in the subject line. Those comments will be forwarded to the Plan Commission members and the petitioner. We would like to remind everyone to please speak directly into the microphone so your comments can be put onto the record. Also, please mute your microphone when not speaking. If you come to the podium to speak, please ensure that the microphone is on, indicated by the green light on the base. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on, it's consent agenda next. There is an item there. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I make a
Make a
motion.
motion.
Who's that?
I was trying to be involved. It's Victor.
That's kind of creepy. Where are you? Go ahead.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll second.
All right. So Victor McCarty has jumped in to make the motion first. Dr. Kelleher has seconded it. To approve the consent agenda, if staff will please call the roll.
Ms. Berkman,
Yes.
Mr. Deck,
Yes.
Mr. Horke,
Yes.
Mr. Johns,
Yes.
Ms. Keller,
Yes.
Mr. Maui,
Yes.
and Mr. McCarty.
Yes.
Consent agenda is approved.
After Christopher. Oh, there he is. We haven't seen Victor yet. So Victor's image hadn't been up there for the vote. Oh, there he is. All right.
I've had my camera on.
All right, so we need to see you when you're voting. You don't necessarily have to be visible for anything else. So you voted yes on the consent agenda. Consent agenda is approved. Moving on to the item of business. It is petition 2212, PUD-20, the Wheeler Landing PUD Amendment 6. Staff can present, and then the petitioner will have an opportunity to also speak.
Yep. Thank you. For the record, Caleb Ernest with the Community Development Department. So this item before you is an amendment to the Wheeler Landing PUD to add 2.34 acres into the Wheeler Landing PUD. The petition was introduced at the November 14th, 2022 council meeting, and the public hearing was at the February 6th, 2023 Plan Commission meeting with a workshop meeting at the March 20th meeting. Since that meeting, there have been modifications made. Since that workshop meeting, the modifications made is that the petitioner has changed from Leo Brown Development to Clark, Quinn, Moses, Scott, and Gran. And additional changes that have been made to the ordinance is that section 2.2, 4, and 5 have been removed, and the concept plan has been modified. So essentially what has been modified now with the ordinance is that it reads as a real estate text, only adding the 2.34 acres into the Wheeler Landing PUD. The petitioners are represented here tonight. They do not plan to make a presentation, but are available for questions, as am I, should you have any for staff. Thank you.
Thank you. So if there are no other comments, we can have commissioner dialogue. This is, as explained, no longer about a specific use that had been proposed previously, but just to add that acreage to the overall PUD with a standard matching the surrounding property. So, any questions or comments for staff or the petitioner?
I have some questions for Caleb, just to help me understand this better. I went back and looked at the Wheeler Landing PUD, which is what you're showing here, and the only change they're asking for is to add this piece of property to the brown up there, which I think is Area 3. Is that correct?
Yes.
That is correct.
Okay, so, and they're not asking for any other modifications. So the uses in Area 3 from the Wheeler Landing PUD, I don't know if you can get to that, but they include multifamily, nursing homes. I don't think it was in your report. I had to go find it.
Really, uses that were in general business as the underlying zoning district are
It
permitted.
was general business as the underlying zoning district, plus there were like 5 other uses that were permitted. And I was hoping we could find those, just so everybody could see what that was.
Yeah.
I think it was multifamily that could be freestanding. I think it was, what else? Like retirement homes, nursing homes. There were several other. there you go. So in Area 3, in additional to the general business, also was allowing multifamily as part of mixed use or standalone structures, assisted living, nursing home, hospice, bed and breakfast, educational facilities with dorms and multi-story parking garage. Also in Area 3, I think you can have a gas station if there was a grocery store. So basically, they are asking to include this property in Area 3 with those uses. Am I correct?
That'd be correct. The specific petition is just adding the real estate, but the underlying zoning district already permits those uses, yes.
Right, they're adding the underlying zoning district that permits these uses.
Right.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that was clear because it was kind of confusing as to what this could or could not be. If we can go back to the concept plan. So Area 3 is these uses, and the green is Area 4, which I think is general business. Is that not correct in the underlying zoning?
Underlying zoning district is general business for all the areas,
Okay.
correct?
So the green is general business, the airport is included in that, and there's no multifamily next to the runway. This is all north of the runway, this Area 3. Right? Looks
I'm
like
not
it
sure the exact definition or the boundaries of the runway itself.
Okay, it looks like it goes up to, stops just short of the top of the green.
Hello, my name is Elizabeth Bentz-Williams, and I'm a land use planner with Clark, Quinn, Moses, Scott, and Gron, LLP in Indianapolis. Do you need my address? Okay. I would like to note that you're correct. We're not changing any of the uses that weren't already approved in the this is the 2018 plan. When
Right.
you look at the map that Caleb had up there earlier, this is kind of on the north side adjacent to 186th Street, and so the already existing Area 3 surrounds this.
Right, right.
So this parcel doesn't adjoin any of the airport property. I think the extent, you can kind of see it in dark, one of those
Right.
grass runways is about halfway down that first slot of green.
That's what I wanted to confirm.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you. That was it. I just wanted to make sure I was clear on what we were doing.
Any other questions or comments?
So just a comment or maybe discussion point in case my colleagues up here are thinking about this as well. So I went back and looked at all the workshop video notes and things, which I was present for. I was not here for the public hearing. And I remembered we talked about architectural standards. And I didn't remember specifically talking about what this does for use, although it may have been in the follow-up discussion where we've continued to maybe regret a little bit how much residential we've let creep in all around the south side of Grand Park there. And so then I started looking at this, oh, what are we doing now? Are we letting that go further? If it was completely like that whole north part, then I'd probably be really opposed to this, saying we just can't keep letting that creep. But it's a notch out of it where it would be really discontinuous with anything else to try to plant the flag there. So it's that same situation where if we could go back in time, there'd be some things different. But that's kind of where I am, where we don't really want the jack-o'-lantern teeth with something notched in there. It seems to make sense to me to kind of let it flow together. That's just my thoughts.
That's what I wanted to point out. I think, you know, initially we were dealing with one piece, and now that we have a better look at it, this is already surrounded by that kind of use. So to say, gee, we don't want that now, when we should have said it a long time ago when we approved Wheeler Landing, I think is kind of not appropriate.
Yeah, and I appreciate your question earlier because I was trying to piece that together myself, and I thought I had landed there, but with that clarification, that does help.
Right.
So.
And again, this is not next to the runway, because I do think we need to protect the airport, and around the airport is all general business, so I think that's appropriate too.
And the amount of acreage notwithstanding, there's still a cap on the number of units, which albeit maybe if we were doing it today instead of however many years ago we did it, we might have a smaller number in that cap. But this sort of, hopefully can be more beneficial because there's more acreage. So we can have either more spread out residential or better yet, residential still capped at whatever the cap is and more acreage that could then be one of the commercial uses that we would like to see.
And as I recall, Caleb, this PUD did not modify any of the architectural standards for multifamily. Therefore, there would be the 75% masonry requirement. Is that correct?
Whatever the standards of the Wheeler Landing PUD, if it defers to the UDO, the city's UDO, then that's the current architectural requirement.
Yeah, I'd say, Cal, just two different issues. First, I'm not sure, it was confusing to me just reading the staff report, because in the staff report, you included all the items, that reduction in masonry and whatnot, that was in the original PUD, but those items were not in the current PUD. And to me, I mean, the staff report to me didn't mean anything at all now, because we're looking at a totally different PUD. Okay, so seems strange that you would suggest that under the staff report, we accept this, you recommend accepting it, and yet the staff report doesn't reflect the PUD that's being presented to us tonight.
So in all of our staff reports, we do overlay the ordinance details, and then chronologically after the ordinance details, we have any modifications made since the public hearing. So the specific section that's labeled modifications since public hearing, February 6, 2023, indicates what has changed since the public hearing.
Right. Again, I appreciate that. Seems a little confusing though, just to me. Second issue was typically we've been asking for no more than a 5-year sunset clause, and this particular ordinance is asking for a 10-year sunset clause, which is out of the ordinary. Can someone explain that to me? I believe it's saying before 2033.
I am filling in for Russell Brown this evening, and I know there have been discussions, and I guess I was not aware that your typical sunset clause is 5 years. So how does that relate to the existing surrounding property that's Area 3? Where are they in their sunset clause?
I believe that if it's made of a condition of the recommendation moving forward to council, then that can be a change that's fixed before it appears to council. The petitioner has expressed, correct me if I'm wrong, that they'd be going towards the August 14th council meeting, so there'd be plenty of time to make that change from 10 years to 5 years if the petitioner is willing.
Is the Wheeler Landing a 5-year sunset?
The Wheeler Landing,
Been
the
a long,
original,
long time ago.
that I believe that was before
I don't think there is a sunset.
There is
it
a
included,
No,
but
we
I
were
can
not
double
doing
check
that
here.
at that time.
Okay,
The-
that was a long time ago.
The goal with so many changes in markets and cost of materials and development, and as we all know, the supply chain and everything that has affected development, our goal in this is to have this one piece, as you said, to get that jack-o'-lantern tooth out of there and market it all together so that there's a good overall plan and not going around this piece in the future. So I think just because of the unknowns, since the other part doesn't have a sunset clause, that's the best probability for why we would ask that, but we'd be willing to continue to discuss that with staff prior to the council meeting.
I think since we started sunset clauses, because we had some PUDs that were out there for 15 years.
Right.
And by the time they came in, the community's needs and desires had changed quite a bit. So it was to avoid having something that was really outdated. And I think we went to 5 years on most of them. Now, that doesn't mean you can't come in and ask for an extension if it's appropriate, but that's kind of the reason.
So,
Randy Zentz, 958 Bright Beam Court, Westfield, Indiana. I'm actually the broker representing the Markham family that's attempting to sell this, that has this parcel listed, as well as I'm the broker for B&V Farms, which is the surrounding property. I don't have an understanding of what the B&V Farms that surrounds this parcel, how does that play into the sunset? All we really want to do is have this zoned the same so that when we get someone comes to market to purchase this, we don't have the additional condition of that purchaser having to get this parcel that is the tooth zoned. So however we can get that done, if that means you want us to agree to 5 years sunset, if that's what the surrounding area is, then we're more than happy to agree to that. Or if it's a condition that you're making to let this happen, then we'll agree to the 5. And like you said, if for some reason it needs to come back, then we'll come back. I mean, the goal is to get across the street is Grand Park. Surrounding it on all their sides is general business with the additional uses. The goal is to make it one continuous property that could all be purchased at one time, because we don't think that we'll have a purchaser for just the 2.34. We think that someone, unless the only purchaser that would purchase 2.34 would probably be a strip center, you know, type. That's the only thing that's too small to do much else than that. So that's the whole logic behind what's up here. I think that's left over from when Leo Brown was involved, and that's a hangover from that period of time, because they were looking at how long it would take them to build out or something like that. So however you'd like to move forward, we would just like to get the 2.34 into the PUD.
And just clarifications, the Wheeler Landing PUD right now does not have a sunset clause. That was before the sunset clause discussion was introduced here. So the surrounding property has no sunset clause, just for clarification.
So Caleb, what does that mean then with, I mean, the sunset clauses typically are getting associated with a PUD. So when this is real estate brought into a PUD by amendment, does just this amended part get the sunset clause, or does that then extend to that whole PUD? How does that language differentiate, or does it?
The language specific in the PUD refers to the real estate, which is identified by the real estate exhibit in the PUD.
This real estate.
So it would just be the 2.34 acres that would sunset.
Seems really odd not to have it matched, so.
Well, matching would mean there is no sunset.
Yeah,
Right.
but it may be an opportunity, to put a sunset clause in and apply it then to the other part of the property.
And that would
Which,
be something the developer would need to be very kind and generous to agree to.
yes, yes.
So we can always
I mean,
ask, and they can decline or they can cooperate.
I mean, but right now he's asking for 10 years, so he's asking for one, so.
I think that the issue with that, I think we've got goodwill on both sides in trying to make that work. The surrounding property, we don't have the ability to tie that in or make that, do away with their sunset clause. But I am curious, I asked Caleb briefly, if we do the 5-year sunset, to go with what you're doing in today's development world, and we got down to 5 years and we needed an extension. It's my understanding that that's never been done in the history of Westfield. So I would just like to know some thoughts so that my client would feel a little more comfortable if we're doing that could actually happen.
I think the reason it's never happened is we started this and none of them have come to a sunset clause expiration yet. But I'm curious, Mr. Zank, this whole property is going to be hopefully developed concurrently or together, or are you?
Can't project that, that's the market.
Okay, and how many parcels separate, are they all under one ownership, or do we have
So
numerous
there's
parcels?
24.34 acres that surrounds the 2.34 acres.
Uh-huh.
And that border, you'd have to pull up the GIS map to understand that. But that parcel to the left of the number 15 is not part of it. So that area there below the yellow is a parcel. That's the part of that's the 24.34. And that is 50% in area 3 and 50% of that, the south end of it, is in Area 4.
Okay, so basically the area we're talking about is the parcel you're representing tonight, the one to the left of the 15, and then the remainder of
The one to the left I have nothing to do with. That's
Right, no,
owned
but
by the
that's a
Wheeler
separate parcel,
family.
I mean.
Yeah, yeah.
And then the rest of it that's surrounds you is a third parcel? Is that what you,
No, there's two parcels there. 2.34 is in yellow,
Mm-hmm.
and below that is a 24.34 acre parcel. Just so happens that the map with the overlay splits that 24.34 in half.
with a green on the southern half?
Not a property line,
Right,
an exhibit drawn by an engineer.
right, okay, I got
Yeah.
it.
Can we talk a little bit about uses, since that's right on 186th Street? I mean, there's a gas station in the uses. That concerns me.
I think that's only if there is a,
I think.
30,000
I
square
didn't
foot
read it.
grocer.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I think that gas station use that is listed has to be with a grocery store, which wouldn't be possible on this
Yeah.
parcel. And we understand that, you know, there are other steps to go and we would come back. At this point, our only goal is to combine this parcel into the PUD. So we're asking just for that 2.9 acres.
okay.
And I understand why you want to do that. I do, but this is like a premier frontage. And a concern we had the last time that this came to us without this piece in it was, I believe it was some type of assisted living or, does anybody recall? It was something in that type of vein.
I think that was in the original proposal, yes.
Yes, and we all expressed concern at the time because it's right across the street from Grand Park, and we'd much rather see commercial there. And so now, giving this piece, which is on the road frontage, it's just concerning because I think we're going to, again, get these residential uses, and what we really want there is commercial. So I'm just wondering if we can kind of discuss that just a little bit. If it's, once a PUD opens, then I believe we can talk about uses. And this is actually its own PUD. That's the way I'm understanding this. They want to pull it into the Wheeler, but this is its own land that's unzoned tonight, correct?
The 2.34 acre property is zoned AGSF1 right now.
So it's got a blank slate right now.
What the petitioner is requesting is that the 2.34 acres be added into the Wheeler Landing PUD.
I understand. And it's right on 186th Street, right? It's the yellow box. So it's a lot of frontage right on 186th Street that we're getting ready to say, okay, it can be apartments if we put it in the Wheeler PUD, correct?
The petitioner's request is to add 2.34 acres. So it's a real estate request. So it's changing the 321 acre Wheeler Landing PUD to a 323 plus acre PUD.
It's changing the zoning of that particular parcel to match the Wheeler PUD,
Correct.
which has those uses,
Which has those uses already approved.
correct?
So Kristen, what I'm hearing is you might be interested, I don't want to put words in your mouth, that's why I'm asking this as a question out loud. Maybe it does belong in the Wheeler Landing PUD so that it's continuous, but maybe it's in area 5, did it go up to 4 before? Whatever, that we can actually talk uses that you feel are more appropriate on 186. Is that, am I
Yes.
hearing your direction correctly?
Yes, if it's open and we're including it in Area 3, can we discuss uses in Area 3?
Well,
I'm not sure in my mind that I recall that that was ever definitively reviewed and agreed upon, that opening means opening everything. And I don't know who's joining us virtually here from legal, if it's Ashley or whoever. But if we've got legal counsel that has been listening in and has something to offer that will help this discussion, I think now would be a great time to hear it.
Sure. This is Ashley Albrecht with Taft Law. The way it's proposed is, let me look at my agenda here. The amendment based on the land. What you are discussing is different than the proposed ordinance, obviously. If you're asking me, is it possible to handle the PUD in a manner as you're suggesting and make it a separate area? That is one way to handle the PUD. If you believe that an area 5 would be more suited to this land, it would require an amendment. I mean, it couldn't proceed as drafted, but what is your specific question?
Whether or not we actually have any reason to continue down a path of discussing overall uses and the balance of the PUD as a result of incorporating this 2.34 acres. Is the tail able to wag the dog or not?
I mean, if as drafted, you are adding real estate into the PUD only, which means the land would be subject to all the current uses. Only. It would be exactly what it would, the Wheeler PUD would apply to this parcel exactly as it would if it was originally included.
So if I could be bold enough to turn this into a yes or no question, the answer to our question is no.
I think, having been here when we wrote the original PUD ordinance and wrote the PUD specifically for Bridgewater, Kevin Buckheit was Director of Planning at the time, and it was assumed that there would be one single property owner for an entire PUD. That's kind of how it started, because Steve Henke owned all the property that was being developed in Bridgewater. And at that time, I do recall Kevin saying that if there's a change made in the PUD or a request that might affect the initial PUD and how it's used or its interactions, that it was an opportunity for us to discuss the entire PUD. Since that time, PUDs have evolved into not one owner, but often multiple owners. Not sure if that's right or wrong, but that's the way it is now. It's not one person having control of it. That's the way it is when it comes in, and then it gets split off, and so there are numerous people in control. So I'm not sure opening up the entire PUD is appropriate because you have numerous other owners. There is not one owner you're dealing with, as we did with Steve initially, Steve Henke.
I would also add, the only notice we sent out is for this parcel that's slightly under 3 acres. So
I think the question comes, listening to Kristen's concerns, it's not a matter of opening the whole PUD, but deciding if this parcel is appropriate to be rezoned to the uses that are in Area 3. I think it's...
Yes, so the way it's presented in front of you is that they're asking this area to be incorporated into the PUD in area, I believe it says 3.
Right, with its uses.
With its uses as it currently is. So they're not asking for a change in use, which they could do, but as what's in front of you now, that's not what they're doing. They're asking you to consider this into Area 3 with the uses in the current Wheeler PUD.
And maybe it's semantics, but in terms of procedural, if I understand this correctly, whether we call it opening up the PUD or not, as we just heard from council, petitioner could ask for change of uses. They aren't, but they could, meaning if enough of us are opposed to just bringing it into Area 3, and I'm not saying we are or aren't, but just thinking procedural, then we're kind of suggesting that if you want to make this continuous, you would need to go that route, which means we open the PUD, whether we called it that or not. I mean, that's just, it becomes kind of workshop-y, and maybe you don't want to do it in this meeting, but ultimately, I think that's the direction it ends up, is the discussion about what does it take for us to put these properties together.
This is in front of us for a recommendation to council. If we, as a body, feel that this is not what this property uses should be, we can send a negative recommendation to council, who will then figure out if it's okay to do anyway, or if they would like for the petitioner to bring back something else. As Mr. Zentz has indicated, a parcel of this size by itself in that location is going to have a dramatically diminished interest from the development community. Somebody's going to have to be able to survive on just a little over 2 acres. Whatever it is that you can put on a little over 2 acres is all that would go there, and we may not like that better than what we're looking at tonight if it gets incorporated into Area 3. So that's really kind of our thought process that we need to keep in front of us tonight.
I think it would be a shame to send them away and then hope that either one, we're going to get our very specific use on only 2.3 acres, or we're going to get that other giant parcel rezoned, or the uses changed on it. That doesn't seem practical. None of the other options seem practical if we don't send this through tonight. And I just feel like we're way overcomplicating this. All they want to do is just bring this in to the rest of, and I realize it's right on the road, and it'd be great to have this or that or what have you, but I just feel like we're way overcomplicating this, and they're asking for something that seems like common sense at this point. So I would hate to send them away, and I don't even know what we're sending them away to do. Again, changing the uses on that other large parcel, that just seems impractical. So I don't know, I would hate to not push this through this evening.
I'm not suggesting that any uses change on any other part of this at all. Okay, that was not my suggestion. My suggestion is that we take this square and it gets its own uses that may not match Area 3. And so it might just be general business instead of a gas station. Because perhaps when this all gets added together, it would be big enough to be a gas station and these things. And so it's just an opportunity before us tonight to try to get what we want along 186th Street. I'm in no way trying to send you away. I'm very much in favor of rezoning the land. So I want it rezoned for commercial, not residential.
And if a gas station is your linchpin here, obviously this parcel by itself isn't big enough to hold the 30,000 square foot store that it would have to be able to qualify to have a gas station. But it goes beyond that. So is the solution to the concern seeking a commitment from the development team that they will only have the one grocery store that's already approved down along Tournament Trail and not do an additional one? It seems a little out of the realm of possibility that this PUD would have multiple grocers in it, but maybe we try to get that
If I
commitment.
can give a couple thoughts here from a
Please.
planning perspective as we're looking at this. I don't know with what we have on file that, because no notice has gone out about any change in uses. So I'm not sure we can really entertain that. When you start talking about a grocery store, this square on its own isn't big enough, but if you put it with the surrounding U shape around it, then with the uses that are permitted, and I understand you don't want residential here, but with the 186th Street and Grand Park and those other things incorporated, I think it does make it much more logistically possible that you will get a big commercial use. And if it's something that's not in those uses, then obviously they would have to come back and they would have a different concept plan.
I think it makes sense to add this parcel. As Andre spoke earlier, and I agree, I think the concern about making this commercial along the road was a long time ago and it should have been discussed more back then. I think now to hold out for commercial on this specific site takes away from a large parcel that could be developed in a more cohesive way. And hopefully, and I don't know, Randy, whether that, you think there could be commercial along there, or whether it'll all be multifamily. You know, time will tell. You don't have a crystal ball, but
Yeah, I mean, I think if you make it general business, it has a better chance of becoming commercial. Because otherwise it's ag. And I don't see doing a PUD for a 2.34 acre parcel and just making that general business. That doesn't make sense. I mean, it would go.
well, I think it
but-
is already, part of the zoning for this area is general business.
Yeah.
But
the
then there are
underlying
additional
zoning.
uses.
Yeah.
But not the 2.34 acres
No, but if we
currently.
add it to the Wheeler Landing PUD, then it becomes general business with additional
Right,
uses that
okay.
are allowed, so.
And another thing to consider is, say, for whatever reason, this is not incorporated into the Area 3, and it gets something standalone, it's going to be probably much more difficult to develop the 23 point whatever it is acres that will have a small piece, a big interruption, and then a modest-sized corner piece, and then everything else is on a north-south side street. So the frontage available for that development becomes really problematic. So I think we really are overthinking this. And as much as I like the thought that we could maybe try to improve and learn from what we did years ago and try to do something different, we can't. So I think we really need to forward a recommendation. If there's not enough support for a favorable one, you know, we'll forward an unfavorable one. But I would like to see this go forward, and I think that we need to work with the development team. Hopefully they'll stay in dialogue with us. We'll figure out what's good for that parcel. We're not talking about the use that was here, and the changes that were in the red line ordinance still include the exhibit of that other development, so that needs to come off. That last page is still there on the, not there, but on the red line ordinance from tonight's agenda, still includes that other use that is, yeah, that needs to go away, because that,
The clean version does not include it, so it's just a Scrivener's error, basically, so.
actually, I didn't look at the clean version because I just wanted to see what was
Yeah, it wasn't-
changed.
wasn't in the clean
So I didn't notice that it wasn't there. All right, so we're good there. But I think,
As-
unless somebody feels really strongly that they have a more salient comment that they've got to make, let's look for a recommendation for
And-
council.
And regarding the sunset clause, I'm going to let council deal with that between now and
Yes.
council meeting. I think that's something that it needs some discussion by somebody other than us here.
10 years is shorter than never.
I'd like to make a motion to send a favorable recommendation to council for 2212 PUD 20.
We have a motion,
I'll second.
and we have a second for a favorable recommendation. It's by Matt Deck and Dr. Kelleher. Will staff please call the roll?
Mr. Deck?
Yes.
Mr. Horke?
Yes.
Mr. Johns?
No.
Ms. Kelleher?
Yes.
Mr. Maui?
Yes.
Mr. McCarty?
Yes.
Ms. Berkman?
Yes.
Passes 6 to
Thank
1.
you very much. We appreciate your patience and the discussion, and we will be in, pardon me, in contact with staff with that other detail with the sunset clause.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item on our agenda is the public hearing for petition 2307-PUD-08, the Bonterra PUD Amendment 1 to change some uses. If staff can introduce, and then if there's petitioner representative to speak, we'll move on to that.
Yes,
For a public
so
hearing.
this was Ryan Collingwood's project, but he is out today, unfortunately, not feeling too well, so I'll provide the introduction here for this item. So thank you, President, members of the board. Or thank you, President. For the record, this is Weston Rogers with the Community Development Department. The item presented before you this evening is an amendment proposal for the Bonterra PUD. The subject property is located in the northwest corner of the Bonterra PUD, located about 500 feet east of the State Road 32 and Shady Nook Road intersection. The amendment proposal outlines modifications to the permitted uses on the site, The proposal also incorporates a concept plan in which will provide a model for the site of the building that would to be developed on the site. The representative is here this evening to provide details of the project. They'll be available to answer questions, as am I, if there are any for staff. Thank you.
Thank you. There is no petitioner, oh, there is, okay, please come forward. I got the impression maybe we're just here to answer questions, but please.
We'll be brief. Just appreciate.
Introduce yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
please.
My name is Scott Kunkel, and with me tonight is Shannon Fletcher, who's our Director of Real Estate Acquisitions. Just want to give you just a quick overview on us, and then Shannon can speak briefly to the project as well. Representing Hartman Capital, we've been in business for about 50 years. We're headquartered in Champaign, Illinois. We've been active in the Indianapolis market now for a while. We have a little over 40,000 square feet of commercial property in the collar communities wrapping around the north side of Indianapolis. We have one project already in Westfield. It's the Oak Ridge Shops. That's the retail strip center that's just this side of the police department on the south side of 32. We've really been bullish on the retail development within Westfield. We've seen a tremendous demand for space. Just anecdotally, we had a period of time when the I Heart Mac and Cheese was transitioning from a franchisee to a company-owned store, so it was dark for about 3 weeks, and we probably had 15 or 20 calls just asking if there's any chance the space was available. And there's no signs up advertising it, but there's that kind of hunger for the space here. Conversely, the current use that's anticipated for this parcel is a office use, which is really not a use that's supported anymore within the market. If you've been following the trends in the more macroeconomic world as it relates to office uses, that's really become a very difficult product to develop. It's next to impossible to finance at this point. Most people are trying to exit that. It was already a trend that was beginning, but with the really fundamental changes that occurred with the COVID pandemic and how that dramatically changed the use of in-office work versus remote work has really reduced that demand for office space. So there's a huge glut of office space in the general market now, and I think that's also reflective of why there really hasn't been any activity on the site given its current use. So our intent is to open this up slightly so some limited uses that are from the general business. We're not opening up the entire general business footprint of allowable uses, but you'll see them noted there in terms of what we'd like to see. But we think this is a great opportunity to extend the success that retail space is already seeing along the State Route 32 corridor. And just, again, anecdotally, when we were here last month to speak to council about this, to introduce it, right before us was a young couple that had a food truck, and they needed to get an extension on their permit to operate it because they couldn't find any retail space within Westfield. They're committed to Westfield and wanted to stay here, but they just couldn't find any space. So that's just a small little snapshot, I think, of what's reflective of what's going on in the market today, and we'd like to be able to help to address that. So Shannon will speak a little bit more specifically to what we intend to do.
So if you see the site plan, or maybe you remember what it looked like, it's going to be a single-story building, approximately 15,000 square feet and some change. So it's not overwhelming at all. There's plenty of parking. There's no curb cuts coming from State Route 32, which I know State Route 32 is going to be widened, and you have a plan to widen it from Noblesville to Westfield. There's obviously a lot of traffic and a lot of load for that road. We are going to have a multi-tenant building, most likely, which will have the opportunity to have 6 to 8 tenants, depending on their size. We're going to completely adhere to the Westfield Unified Development Order, the State Route 32 Overlay District, and the planned development requirement as modified, as we're requesting it be modified. Everything will be appropriate massing, scale, details, and materials to look very nice with the homes that are being built in that area.
Okay, does that complete your remarks? Okay, this item requires public hearing, so So we'll do that next, and then we'll open the floor for comments from here. Is there anybody that's signed up to speak?
No, not at this time.
No. All right, we are still allowing virtual comments, so we'll have a little dead time here in the meeting. As mentioned at the top of the meeting, if there is somebody attending virtually that wants to participate in the public hearing, you need to quickly send an email to planners@westfield.in.gov and reference the Bonterra amendment. So it is now open at 7:50. So at 7:52, if there isn't an email or somebody that comes into the building, we'll close the public hearing and move on. It is.
I'm going to ask staff if they could pull up the 32 overlay, because I have some questions about it. I thought I'd give you a head start. I think I remember it, but there's parts that are out there. And I guess my first question is, how far east does it go?
The 32 overlay?
Yeah, does it go all the way along?
It goes all the way to the municipal boundary line.
Okay, I wasn't sure. One of our older overlays stopped before it went all the way east.
Is there anything populating the inbox?
No, no emails.
Okay, 7:52, the public hearing is closed. We have a dialogue started, I guess.
The building that you have next to the fire station with the macaroni, how many square feet is that compared to what this one's going to be? It's a very attractive building, by the way.
That's 13,300 square.
If you can come
Okay.
up to the podium to make sure that we
So
hear
this
your
will be-
voice on our
this will
recording.
be bigger-
I'm sorry.
Bigger or about the same size?
Yeah, we're between 15 and 16,000, so say between 2,000,
Okay, so
25.
about the same as the
Similar
other.
scale.
Okay, and I was curious about the square footage as well, because the uses include a grocer not to exceed 16,000 square feet, which then be the entirety of the building, and
That's
we're
okay.
expecting that that's the building that we're gonna see.
Right, yeah, it's
Kind of an
unlikely,
awkward
it's
layout.
unlikely that would be, yeah.
Yeah, but it could be.
Yeah.
Trader Joe's, we want to trade.
Yeah, maybe. It'd have to be like a boutique grocer.
So Caleb, my question was, what's the minimum size in the State Road 32 overlay, square footage wise? I think there is one. Because we were trying to get things to be massed rather than a bunch of little freestanding things we wanted.
Yeah, I think it was
like
I
when
think it was a
built-
5,000 square foot minimum. One of the bigger issues there, and it's something that we're aware of and we intend to comply with, is the minimum height of 18 feet for the
Okay.
building. So, yeah, one of the things that we've gone into this with our eyes open on is that there are some pretty prescriptive requirements associated with the State Route 32 overlay district, and we fully intend to adhere to all those.
Yeah, so I guess the State Road 32 then has a minimum of 5,000 square feet.
Yeah, we're checking to see if the PUD amended that, just to triple check. But
Okay, yeah.
5,000 is the standard.
Yeah, because it would be nice if we were trying to get more massing like the one that you built, so we don't have a bunch of little things sitting there that can then be vacated and, you know, if there's one big building, it's unlikely that it will
Right.
be vacated in total and we'll still have
Hopefully,
viable
not.
businesses. Right.
Yes. So the original Bonterra PUD defers basically to the 32 overlay, specifically in regards to building size. It's in 7.3 of the original Bonterra PUD. This amendment does not modify that section, so it does, the 5,000 square foot would be the minimum.
Okay. And I guess I'm wondering if you intend to do larger, if that would be something you would consider discussing.
We could, it's just that you need to maintain an appropriate balance between parking and the retail footprint.
Right.
And we feel like we're kind of at that right balance right now. So, could it be 800 square feet larger, 1,000? Sure.
Yeah, but as a single freestanding building, I think we're talking about.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. Is that what,
I also believe section 3 here, the proposed amendment, does have this language in here that says that the building, any building developed on the real estate is substantially similar in size to the building footprint shown on the concept plan.
okay,
And if we go to the concept plan, it does
that takes
list
care of it.
gross square footage on here
Okay.
as well.
I understand. You're just concerned that it opens door to like
I don't
something
want this to
different
be
happening.
4 separate
Oh, no.
buildings with parking between them.
No, no.
So that's good, so we've got that covered. That was my question 1. The building that you have currently has 4-sided architecture. I don't know if that's part of the 32 overlay, but it certainly
is.
is attractive, so,
Yeah, and that's our intent for this as well.
okay, great. So we don't need to add that in anywhere if it's part of the overlay. I think that was those were my only questions.
Thank you.
Okay. Other comments? Mike?
Yeah, my one concern was the fact that, I think this is a fantastic project. I love the 4-sided architecture. I think that's important. I also think it's important because you're budding Bonterra, okay?
Correct.
So we've got a lot of residential people immediately close to the property. I guess my big concern would be with lighting or light pollution, noise pollution that might be associated with your project, minimizing any light pollution that would be coming into the Bonterra area.
Our design standard for all of our retail developments is the positive cutoff light fixtures, where they have, really specific control of the foot candles that spill beyond the property. That's generally done mechanically with the design of the fixture. So we do lighting studies as part of that process.
And then along with that, of course, I'd be somewhat concerned with the dumpsters, where they're going to be, as we get deeper into this.
Sure, absolutely, yeah. But yeah, I think actually within the ordinance is a requirement that for those be screened. Yeah.
So that's all I have.
Screened, not visible from Route 32.
Right, yeah.
But there's, as Mike was mentioning, there's residents to the south that need to have something attractive to look at. Maybe more for staff. When Bonterra was approved in the first place, we had a discussion about the uses to the west and the 32 dead-end road cut that went to the credit union and then the dental office, and there's still an additional site. There was something in the Bonterra PUD that envisioned a connection there. This concept plan, Exhibit B, shows something right up near Route 32. Do we know that that can happen? Because that's not necessarily a given unless that's already been envisioned and documented somewhere. But it's a pretty important thing to have here.
You're talking about the location of the curb cut specifically?
The one on the west side that would go towards that building that is kind of a big mass with something coming south of it, which is drive-throughs with a canopy over them. That's Indiana Members Credit Union. And that in and out over there, I'm not sure is a given that it can just happen there, because that's not a city street over there.
Oh, you're saying as like maybe a precondition or within the Bonterra PUD that there's limitations?
I don't recall what was acknowledged there, because we've done something, too many things since then, and I don't remember the specifics, but there was concern about the egress for Bonterra and that something probably needed to happen over there. And I believe there was a dialogue with the property owners there, but I don't recall what the outcome was.
Right, so that may be something that staff needs to look into to see, can they indeed have that exit, right there, because that's not a public street.
The parcel line goes to the middle of that, so I'm looking at the GIS right now, so maybe this is a little easier than what I was remembering.
Yeah,
But
I think when we looked at that, and I can't speak with 100% confidence, but like maybe 95, that when we looked at that there was access rights associated with that private street to this parcel. Yeah, we'll double check. We'll return that 95 into 100.
Yeah, because we don't want you to find out you can't have access over there. That would not be good.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I have anything else. Do we have other comments from anyone here? Victor, are you still out there? Anything to contribute?
I'm still here. Just that I appreciate the opportunity for more entrepreneurs, whether it be in Westfield, locally beyond, or so on and so forth, to be able to have their business here. So I'm looking forward to what might be a possible tenant to this use, considering what others have before. And then you mentioned it as someone who has a food truck that has been looking for a place in Westfield. So again, who knows what this could be, but I agree that this is the best use for it. So thank you.
Thank you. There's no other comments? Then we'll see you back for a workshop or other subsequent meeting.
Do we need to consider waiving a workshop?
Yeah, I'm
I
not,
mean, is it a requirement now that,
It is a requirement we would have to waive if we were not going to do it, correct?
If you would not like to go to the workshop meeting, then you would waive that.
I guess that would be, yeah, we hadn't been anticipating that, but so if that's an option to waive, I think that would be something we would appreciate.
Well, there's some loose ends, but they don't probably necessarily require that. Is there any feeling amongst the membership? Do we feel like?
personally, I don't know that a workshop is necessary, but that's just me.
I would agree.
I'll make a motion that we waive the requirement for a workshop.
I'll second.
I'd second motion.
All right. Let me make a note here. That was Andre makes the motion and Mike John seconds the motion. Where are you, Mike? To waive the workshop. Okay, so we have a motion, we have a second. Staff would please call the roll.
Mr. Horke,
Yes.
Mr. Johns,
Yes.
Ms. Kelleher,
Yes,
Mr. Maui,
Yes.
Mr. McCarty,
I like your guys' thinking. Yes.
Ms. Berkman,
Yes.
and Mr. Deck.
Yes.
All right, so the workshop is waived. There's still material that staff needs to finish. We don't need to go as far as actually sending a recommendation tonight, or are all the i's dotted and t's crossed sufficiently in your estimation?
That's pretty difficult for us to say right now, just because with Ryan not being
True,
here.
the planner that's most
we,
involved is not here, so.
We wouldn't want to speak on his behalf for something
would-
that important.
Right.
Ryan has been great to work with.
Yeah, so we'll probably punt on that for now.
Then I would prefer that we see another meeting before we make a recommendation on this. It just won't be a workshop
I
meeting.
think that's just the safest path, just because the staff member on the project, Ryan, he's not here to validate if the PUD he feels from a staff perspective is in shape to recommend to council, so.
Understand?
can they be on our next agenda? I mean,
It can be on
we
the
do
next
other things
agenda at a
besides
workshop, even
workshops.
though they're not the workshop.
right,
Well,
in 2 weeks.
no, we can make a recommendation at the workshop meeting if Ryan confirms everything's ready and we don't need to have a workshop with them. They can still
Yeah.
be on the agenda for a recommendation,
Um,
which would get them to the first August council meeting, or is that not correct?
Yeah, Ashley, you can confirm what I'm about to say, but I believe if you suspend the rules at the workshop meeting, you can forward a recommendation, but that would be up to you all
The
to,
membership present on that
to
night.
agree to that, to suspend those rules and then forward a recommendation.
Ashley, any further comments?
I believe you can suspend the rules.
And then make the recommendation at the workshop meeting on the assumption that everything is deemed ready for the ordinance to
Correct.
get a
and
recommendation to council.
So
Correct.
if we pull up a calendar real quick.
July 17th.
Okay, just so we're all on the same page, so that would be the workshop, July 17th. You'd be looking for a recommendation, and then the council meeting, I want to say would be the 24th, is that it?
August 14th.
August, yeah, August.
Is that okay with you? I mean,
That's
we're
fine
pushing,
with
we're
us.
moving you along, but I
No, I understand.
We may have-
I'm just trying to think logistically.
The way the
Yeah.
calendar works, if it's, there isn't another council meeting this month, we'll have another APC meeting.
Okay, before
But
that
we won't
anyways.
have to waive rules,
Yeah,
because we'll be meeting the week before the council meeting that this would go to.
Correct.
If we chat with him between now and then, and he's indicating to us he's comfortable. Would it be helpful for us to be back at that? Or is that just something where it's just, he'll nod his head in the meeting and say yes, and then you guys vote then? Or, I guess, we're here, we'll be willing to make the drive over if it's helpful, but.
All right, that's kind of up to you, but as I noted by looking at the calendar, if the next council meeting is until August 14th, we have a similar meeting to this on August 7th, where we could have it on the agenda. and not
I
have-
think he's still asking if he needs to be back here.
Yeah,
Well, that's up to you if you want to be present.
I guess if it's helpful for us to be present, obviously we don't want to not be here and then have something happen, but.
You coming over from Illinois?
We are.
Yeah, there's the virtual option as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we're not.
I think you're good dialing in virtual.
Okay, all right, that's
Yeah.
fine. Like I said, it's important to us, so we're not opposed about making the drive if that's helpful, but
Right.
also, if we didn't
We
have
don't
to,
think
that's
you've
fine, too.
lost any zest if you're virtual. Okay. You're all good.
Your approval chances are just as likely either way.
So I guess what we're saying is we're willing to move this along.
Oh, no, I
If-
appreciate that.
if-
Yeah.
If that's too fast, or you can't
No,
be
no, no,
here,
no,
and
no,
we
we're
can
ready,
adjust
so that's
that.
great. So,
Okay.
yeah, that's super. Appreciate your.
Really, Ryan will give you the feel that you most urgently need to know.
Right.
Yeah,
how
that's
present
really-
you would have to be in person or
Yeah,
virtual.
we'll defer to his guidance
So
on that.
we'll take it up at that time, in whatever
Thank you so
manner is
much.
appropriate.
Great.
So
Thanks for coming in
Thanks for
tonight.
being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
we're going to drive through some rain on the way home, so be careful. No, there's a big line out there still. I looked at the radar a little bit ago.
Thanks.
Yeah, something like that. All right, so that completes the public hearing item. There are 2 items continued to future meetings, taking us now to reports and comments. Anything for the general consumption of the Plan Commission from the membership? Seeing none. Downtown update is still on here, but we were going to scratch that. City Council liaison, the usual one is out
She's
east
not here,
somewhere.
so-
She's not up north shooting muskets, I asked.
I'll see if I
Said
can do a
no.
quick overview, probably not as well as
Heard
Cindy
about shooting
can, but,
muskets?
we did have a city council meeting on June 26th. We had some miscellaneous business. Lisa and Mark Hall asked for permission from the council to place an outdoor food pantry behind the property here at City Hall. That was approved unanimously. We also had a report from Matt Trinian on money spent year-to-date at Grand Park and the details of consulting fees paid to Legacy Sports Group. Following that, old business, ordinance 2308, establishing a Department of Parks and Recreation and Board, was actually voted down by the council in a 4-3 vote. I think the general consensus was we're hoping that the next mayor we wanted to see him, give him the courtesy of choosing his own members for that council. We went on to the second item, ordinance 23-11, investment policy for the city of Westfield. That item was passed 7-0, and we'll be looking at investing all of the additional revenues that are out there. The RDC, I think, has about $23-30 million in revenue that in the bank that we hope to invest and make some profit on. Moved into new business, and we had one item, ordinance 2313, prohibiting the use of public records for commercial purposes. That was introduced and will be voted on at the next council meeting. That's it, short meeting.
Thank you. There was no BZA meeting, and there was no plat committee meeting. So, no reports there. Community development, do you have any words of wisdom for us? Nothing? We're doing a great job of standing in for the boss.
Yeah, so we hope everyone had a nice 4th of July. And thank you all for attending today.
Spectacular fireworks last night.
After a midweek holiday, so
Yeah.
happy
All right,
to be here.
motion to adjourn? So moved. Dr.
So
Kelleher.
moved. Turn my microphone on.
And is there a second? Kristen Berkman. Seems crazy, but so we have Victor virtually. Can we call the roll, please?
Virtual Vic.
Mr. Johns,
Yes.
Ms. Keller,
Yes.
Mr. Maui,
Yes.
Mr. McCarty,
Yes.
Ms. Berkman,
Yes.
Mr. Deck,
Yes.
and Mr. Horke.
And I will make it unanimous, yes. Meeting adjourned at 8:09.
That was an hour.